I am Consciously Curious, a podcast for those that are searching for meaning and fulfillment in their lives. My name is Victor Chan, and I'm on a mission to find out why people do what they do. I've interviewed white-collar to blue-collar, entrepreneurs to passion projects, and life is just too short to not produce meaningful work. Thanks for tuning in. All right, we're live. Carolyn.
Hello.
What's up?
Well, it's a gloomy Monday here in Chicago, but I'm excited to be here with you.
Up and down. It doesn't happen too often when strangers get to come on, but I'm very open to it, and I'm glad our paths crossed. Thank you, Carmilla, for crossing our paths, and for you reaching out. And I don't come from the law world, but I'm fascinated with it. And you are, what little I know about your journey, I relate to, in the sense of you were practicing for 14 years, and now you're a facilitator. Now you're connecting clients with candidates, essentially. And I feel the same way, in the sense of I'm a non-practicing paramedic. And I'm facilitating or connecting people to where they want to go, essentially. Where are you at in your journey? If you were, I don't know if you have like a goal or a potential destination in mind, but is there, like, how do you feel about where you're at right now?
Well, first, I love what I do, which I think is really important and unfortunately all too rare out there in our world today. Yeah. But as I see it, most people spend a very large portion of their time working. Mm-hmm. And it's really sad that so many people really don't enjoy that time.
Yeah.
And whether it's just at a tactical level, they don't enjoy what they're doing, or at a higher level, they don't feel like they are able to live their purpose, which I know is something that is very motivating for you. Mm-hmm. Or if they don't feel like they're being used to their full potential, or that they're a cog in a bigger process. Sure. And that they don't matter. Or on the flip side, if a company doesn't feel that it's getting the support that it needs, and if I can help bring that together, right? My best days are when I make that perfect match and find a company that has a need and a candidate that has a skill, and they are both getting something better than where they started.
Yeah, 100%. I caught up with the co-founder last night, and I don't think he's alone in feeling this, but I feel like some people feel obligated to stay in a certain position because of the lifestyle it's afforded them, and they might not have the bandwidth in their free time to seek alternative options or to build alternative options. And I don't know how much of a choice they have in that. So it ends up feeling forced and something they have to do, and it ends up becoming transactional, and resentment starts to set in, and it's tough. But you know, that should be a sign, right? If you're complaining about something, to try your best to build something or search for something on the side. I don't know how many people truly are stuck.
So first of all, no one is stuck. I frequently tell people when they come to me who are looking to make a change, I explain to them that I have seen people make drastic career shifts. So there is nothing that is off limits. Where the difference is, the closer that the thing you want to do is to what you are currently doing, the less work you have to put into making the transition. Right? So if you want to make a parallel type of a leap, you generally are fine with what you're doing, but don't think you're doing it at the right place,
Yeah.
then you can probably reach out to me or someone like me and reach out to a couple personal connections
Yeah.
and find something.
Yeah. What are some components to fulfillment that you try to tease out amongst your candidates to identify that good fit?
Well, it's really very individual specific.
As it should be. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I try to do if someone comes to me and they're not happy and they want to make a change is I try to figure out and get them to articulate what they do enjoy about what they're doing and what they either don't enjoy or would like to improve. So from there is a basis to decide, okay, well, what types of jobs are available that would allow you to do more of the things in the plus side of the column than on the negative side. Doing that exercise can also help someone decide if maybe the issue isn't the job they're doing, but it is just the place. Because if they like the general responsibilities that they have and the contributions that they are making to helping their clients achieve their goals, then maybe it is just a culture or a fit.
Yeah.
So I've also helped people decide, oh, maybe I do want to stay in my general type of field, but just shift places. And I've also helped people to see that they actually have it pretty good. And maybe they should stay where they are and take that time and energy to find the joy and the purpose in what they're doing.
Oh God! So yeah, we those themes came up last night as well. We have a friend, the co-founder, we have a friend that is trying to implement and alter culture, but in an organization that's so large and so bureaucratic, and there's so many rungs to the ladder before you're in a position to affect change, and it's almost like hopeless to the point where like, should I just leave? Like, should I just exit? And is that easier? But then you feel like you're leaving so many people that you love to work with, and they might look up to you to affect this. It's such a tricky position to be in.
Well, and is it easier to leave?
Yeah.
Yes and no, right? I think the reality is, and everybody is seeking this holy grail, this perfection, and it just doesn't exist.
Okay.
I always see life as a scale, and when you put more weight on one side, then that takes weight off the other side. If your friend decides to leave, I'm sure they will gain something, but they will also lose something. And so I think for them, the critical questions are, they've probably realized that they're not going to make the monumental change that they had envisioned when they stepped into this role. However, can they make incremental change? Can they use their skills and their access to make things better for some subset of the population? If that happens, then maybe they'll get some credibility and some publicity and be able to bring change to either a different area of the company or maybe even to broaden it.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm hearing gratitude for the position you're currently in. I'm hearing play the long game. I'm hearing maintain perspective. We also last night talked about how discouraging or demoralizing it can feel when you look at the big picture of the state of the world and how the world can feel like it's on fire. And I hear a lot of grumblings of like, I just want to leave the U.S. for something else. And like, how do we scale that back and remind ourselves of the micro effects that we might be able to have in our day to day, despite how negative it can be relative to the world. You know.
Like that, I think that whoever has the answer to that question, then all of a sudden we've achieved the perfect world. Look, the reality is that, right, when you're in physical pain, everything else is harder. It's hard to smile. It's hard to find joy. Same thing with being in emotional pain. And I think that to whatever extent we are able to do so, it's important to figure out where you are, how, if at all, that is negatively affecting you personally and or professionally, and then embark in whatever mindfulness journey is available to you, whether that's therapy, whether that's yoga, whether that's meditation. It can come through an app. It can come through a gratitude journal. I'm a huge believer in the gratitude journal. But if you bring that negativity to everything you do, not only will you be disadvantaging yourself and put yourself in a position where you're unlikely to be successful, but that's going to cascade down to your friends, your family, your coworkers, and the ultimate consumers of whatever service you're providing. So it's hard, but if people don't take that time to bring their best self as often as possible, then everyone's being cheated.
Yeah, I am always with the EMT class. I'm always trying to improve the student experience, and that starts with application, which I coincidentally opened today. And it stems from seeing our students drop the course along the journey, and we hate seeing students go. And so I also read this kind of blurb of, maybe it was an Instagram reel, of no matter how good the seeds I give you, like if we were imagining we're in a field and I gave you seeds and it was up to you to water them, and I gave you all the tools to help you, produce these plants, if the land was not tilled properly and it's infertile essentially, no matter how much water you put in it and on it, it's not going to grow. And so with that analogy, how do I ensure or have the applicant reflect on how fertile their current environment is?
That would be, I wish I could give you.
And I wonder if you've thought about that as far as when you have candidates, is everything else in their life okay, to where they can put their best selves forward?
It's impossible to not think about it. And it's interesting because when you and I were talking just a few minutes ago before we put the headphones on and sat behind the mics, you were explaining that you, in your journey of doing this podcast and having these conversations, have transitioned from the hows to the whys. So with what I do day to day, it is more transactional. It's how do I look for a job? How do I show up to an interview? How do I answer questions in order to get that job? So unless candidates are opening up to me, I don't necessarily have visibility.
Oh, okay.
So it's very different when I'm working with a friend who I know where they are in life versus what I do, wash, rinse, repeat day after day, where I am hired by clients to find people for jobs in their organizations. And so I go out into the world and try to find those candidates, and generally they're going to show up to our conversation as their best self because they want a new job and they want to impress me.
Yeah, I know. It's but how do you overcome that? Break down the or like showcase the authenticity? How do you ensure that this is a safe space? You don't have to fake anything. And it's like I don't know if there's any way around that, especially on a first impression type introduction.
I just tell candidates that it's important for me to have as much information as possible and to know the truth.
Yeah.
And sometimes that truth is that they've been let go from a job, right?
Okay.
They've been fired.
Yeah.
And it's important for me to know that, so that I can really help them in their journey, because if they were fired from a job, well, let's figure out, is it because it wasn't the right job for you? And so maybe this is a time to reinvent yourself and look for something different. Or was it just a bad fit? And I think a lot of times I see candidates who've lost their mojo.
Wow.
And that can really destroy their chances of being successful in a job search process. So I spend a lot of a lot of time working with really accomplished people with really tremendous backgrounds and reminding them that even though they had a bad month, year, couple of years, they are still amazing and they can come out of the other side even better.
Wow. Can you describe, I hope you can. I'm sure it's hard to put words to this, but describe what it's like to come across someone who has their mojo together.
Well, I mean, look, I deal with lawyers all day long. So I also deal with plenty of people whose mojo is very strong. So it's, I think it's finding that happy medium between feeling confident and knowing that you can bring great things, but maybe not being overly confident and feeling like you are the only answer to every question.
Okay, so confidently humble. Humbly confident.
Humbly confident, I think, is probably the right way.
Okay. Is there anything else more we should know about you before we dive into your personal background?
Well, I think let's dive in, and I guess all the things will come up.
I guess it's what or who led you into the world of law? You studied at UPenn?
I did.
And were you born on did you grow up on the East Coast, or did you?
Well, so this is a subject of much debate in my life. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So outside of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Huge Pittsburgh Steeler fan.
Okay.
And Western Pennsylvania is interesting because it's in Pennsylvania, which is clearly an East Coast state, but it is much closer to Ohio than it is to, say, Philadelphia, which is an East Coast city.
Okay.
So I think in many ways, Western Pennsylvania is the best of all worlds because you kind of get to be East Coast
That's cool.
adjacent.
I've never met someone that grew up in Western Pennsylvania.
But we have good Midwestern values and people are super friendly. So then to answer your question about going to Penn, so I grew up in a small town in Western Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, but not a suburb. Its own county seat of Westmoreland County, where my father, who had also gone to Penn, was a small town attorney.
Wow.
He had an office across the street from the courthouse, which looks just like a little courthouse would in a movie, right? Think Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
just like that little town, just like Punxsutawney. And starting at the age of 11, I would go in his office. I would help him with his files. Wow. I sat in on depositions.
Oh, wow.
So much younger than anyone should have an idea of what they want to do when they grow up.
Okay.
Or at least beyond being a fireman or a ballerina,
right? Yeah. Were you exposed to anything else, or?
I mean, my mom, she worked different jobs, but no, I didn't ever go into her office or anything. So, I mean, I guess probably not, but that was just what I knew I was going to do.
Oh, wow. So 11. Okay.
Maybe 12 or 13 by the time I committed.
Yeah. Would you say your high school did a good job at cultivating interests and potential opportunities?
So I also had a very unique high school
Okay.
experience. I went to an all-girls boarding school
Wow.
in McLean, Virginia, which is outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And they actually did an amazing job of helping people to cultivate skills and interests, because the reason I chose that school, it's called the Madeira School. It's a beautiful 400-acre campus on the Potomac River with rock climbing and zip lines and horses.
Wow.
Definitely different from your Skokie upbringing. And the reason I chose the school is they had a bit of a non-traditional program. Every Wednesday, instead of being in classes, they had a co-curriculum program. Each year, there was sort of a different focus. So freshman year, we really used that beautiful campus that we were on. And so we did zip lining, rock climbing, rappelling. In the wintertime, we did CPR and
nice.
other types of training. And then you had a choice for the spring semester, some sort of elective, and I chose outdoor cooking, so I could cook you an
Not just
egg
cooking,
in an
but
orange
outdoor
peel.
cooking.
Oh yeah, because it was all
what?
very, yes, I could cook you an egg in an orange peel. I haven't done it in many years, but
Wow.
but I theoretically learned how. Sophomore year, it was community service.
Hold on. That was all freshman
Yeah,
year?
that's all freshman year.
Oh my goodness. What?
Yeah, that's freshman year. Sophomore year, we focused on community service.
Wow.
So I worked as a candy striper at Georgetown University Hospital.
What is that? Candy striper.
That was sort of the volunteers that would go in, and you would basically just go around and talk to the patients and help them. So it was a supporter to a nurse. I don't think
Sure.
they have them anymore.
I've never heard it like that, though.
And the reason they were called candy stripers is because they used to have these little uniforms and they looked like a candy cane.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then the second half of the year, I worked in a daycare, which
Wow.
I've always loved kids. So that was...
Is that still on campus, or is that...
No, we would get on buses and go. So the Georgetown...
Oh, wow.
The Georgetown University Hospital. And then the daycare where I worked was in Virginia.
Did that, so like volunteering, and I love the exposure. It's the variety, but did that stoke anything in you with medicine or anything like that?
Well, I had always thought that I wanted to potentially pursue a career in medicine, right? Or, maybe combine that with law.
Yeah.
Until I took high school physics. And
okay.
then I realized that any type of a science degree was
interesting.
not in my future.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, back to traditional
Okay.
law at that
Okay.
point. But I also, I grew up with a tradition of helping others. And so that was a great opportunity for me. And I've continued to seek opportunities to help others in my adult life. And I will continue to do so. And I'm a member of the philanthropy committee at my company. And so I'm constantly looking for ways that we can get out there. Our junior year, we spent on Capitol Hill. So I was an intern for a congressperson from Western Pennsylvania.
Wow.
But we felt pretty badass because we had access to there's a little underground railroad that takes you.
Really?
Yeah, from different parts of the Capitol. So that was just an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And then senior year, just like any internship, we were tasked to find our own internship of what we wanted to do. And I, at the time, was very into politics. I did Model UN and Model US Senate and all of those activities. And so I found an internship with the now defunct United Press International. And we were researching a potential story at the Pentagon that had to do with financial mismanagement.
Sure.
And yeah, it was, again, a terrific experience.
Did that stoke any journalism,
No.
embers? No. Oh, okay.
No,
All right.
and pretty much that pretty much put to light the hard work that goes into every piece that you see, and that much work for.
And this is all on top of the core curriculum, right?
Oh yeah, no, taking
that's amazing.
full loads of classes and
these extracurriculars, you had to do at least one or two every year, or did everyone kind of fall into these categories like freshmen, sophomore, junior, senior?
Yeah, exactly, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
In a way, I like that. Like I had privileged opportunities in the suburbs, but nothing was forced, and so without that force, that requirement, I just had a lot of free time. I didn't take up these opportunities. I kind of wish looking back, I wish I did, but I was just a dumb teenager. I didn't think twice about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this wasn't sort of just extracurricular, which it might not surprise you to know. I also did 100 clubs, and I did lighting for all the plays, and I was doing 1,000 things. But what really appealed to me about this school and this program is that traditional classroom learning only gets you so far. And what they did is they took a 5-day school week and collapsed that into 4 days.
Okay.
Right? Because we did all of our classes, including APs, in 4 days. And so it's kind of acknowledging that to get a real benefit from education, it's helpful to do more, to be creative, to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And I think all of us went out into the world ready to work and to contribute to society, and with some understanding of how things work in the real world. And I think a lot of teenagers don't necessarily get that.
Which inspires me to almost come up with our own Montessori, our own preschool,
elementary Montessori.
How do you continue that inspiration for the next generation?
Well, I know for me and for my kids, I've tried to make sure that we do different volunteer types of activities, definitely keep them informed with what I do. And I've also encouraged them to work from a very early age, babysitting or mother's helper work as soon as they were able to do so. But then as soon as they turned 16, they all got jobs so that they could understand that the academic work is important, but it's more important to be able to go out there and deal with people, to have a manager you don't like, to have to do things you don't want to do, and to not let being upset about those things define who you are. Right?
Yeah.
So it kind of brings us a little back full circle.
Oh, yeah.
Right? To what do you do with that person who is looking for a job and they're just upset and angry? Hopefully at some point I will get a glimpse into their life to know, okay, yeah, this is someone that just probably needs to do some self-work. Finding a new job isn't going to be the panacea that they think it's going to be. Or, okay, maybe I can just tweak what they're doing a little bit, give them some more positive things to focus on, and that will have a snowball effect. And they'll see a little bit more success, and then they'll start to feel lighter.
Wow. With teenagers, did you find that these themes that we just mentioned were great motivators for them, or is it simply, you're going to be paid a certain amount to do things? I don't know too many teenagers that are inherently motivated to be of service to the world at that age, I guess.
So there's no question they are motivated by money. So they like that part. But I think they also appreciate that they developed a certain amount of maturity by being in these jobs.
Which comes with time though, right? How did they get attracted to that in the beginning?
It's so
is it the money thing,
so hard to know.
you get going, yeah, right, and then you get going, and
well, or I think it's just if you go into a job with a success mindset and you pay attention to who is successful and who isn't, and you model the behaviors that are more successful, or I think that they just always brought with them an understanding that they need to do a good job and that it's important. And I think that they liked the praise that they received when they did something well. I think that they liked being selected to do things that other people weren't necessarily selected for. So I think, again, these things snowball.
They do. I know. At such an early age, I guess if you were to reflect like on the development, what did you do to incentivize or nurture the observational skills and curiosity of the kiddos?
Well, we live in the city of Chicago, which, as you know, there are a plethora of activities. And I did highlight activities that were close to home.
Great, yeah.
But right in the Bucktown area, we had Holstein Park.
Okay. And
they offered classes from, soccer and basketball and arts, mommy and me, to they taught golf at some point. Wow. They had t-ball, baseball. So I just signed them up for all kinds of activities and wanted them to get a little taste of everything before they kind of settled in and chose the activities that they would focus on.
Did you have a personal amount of time, a duration before you allowed them to stop doing said activity?
So there was no quitting in that session.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So no matter how miserable they were, they had to finish out the session.
And what's this, not just that one session, but like the duration, like you sign up for a week, like a few weeks, like is that what you mean?
Yeah. The duration is anywhere from probably 6 to 12 weeks. So depending on what the activity is. So we were going till the end. Once we signed up.
And if they still didn't like it by then.
Then
I always wondered that. It's just like how much time do you kind of put it on them until you allow them to move on to something else.
And the important thing with that is that at some point, and it's different depending on their ages and how much else they have going on, but generally they would have to replace it with something.
I like that.
Right? Like they can't not have anything.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, too much free time isn't a good thing.
No, definitely.
Now, and on the other side of that scale, if my calendar is fully booked to the brim, then I'm like burnt out as well, right? So it's like, do you block out at this? And now we're going back to present day, but like blocking out free time, or just and people consider free time differently, but free time in the sense of to allow yourself to daydream. Or it could be to relax and reflect. Free time could be through yoga, but some could be like just vegging out. I don't know. People have different definitions of free time, but allow yourself to decompress and daydream for the next thing.
Yeah, for me, I do try to calendar my gym time, which and I put some time on either end of whatever class I'm doing. So, try to take some time at the beginning, do whatever class I'm going to do. And then wherever possible, I like to kind of go and sit in the sauna for half an hour. And just try to take some time on the back end. So I think that's kind of my scheduled me time.
Sure.
But as anyone who knows me will tell you, I watch a lot of really bad television, and I don't schedule that. I just work it in whenever I have a moment.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. So what was senior year like for you?
Senior year, high school or college?
Of high school.
So senior year was great, right? I
Yeah.
was going to the Pentagon and,
Oh,
and
okay,
doing
Wow.
research
Yeah.
and applying to colleges. I was lucky enough to get my admission to Penn early. So
Nice. Was
in
that
December,
top three?
well, it was I applied early decision. It was
okay.
my top choice.
Nice,
so
nice,
I got
okay.
in early. I was committed, and so didn't have to worry about
Yeah.
college anymore. Had a great group of friends.
Sure.
And yeah, I loved my senior year of high school.
When it came time to picking a potential major, what did your peers or counselors or parents tell you to think about when you start making that decision?
Well, because I was so focused on going to law school, it almost didn't matter what I majored in because you can pretty much major in anything. As I told you before, I was very interested in politics, which has a lot of history woven into that. And so my major was international relations, which is a combination of political science, history, and economics.
Okay, that's great. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And were you happy with that? Like looking back, like happy with that decision? Okay.
It was a great major. I also had studied French
Wow.
starting in 6th grade.
Okay.
And so I took French in college and I spent a semester in Paris as
wow.
well. And that was terrific. And again, all woven quite nicely with my major that
Sure.
I selected. And as part of my study abroad semester, I was able to take classes. There's a French university. I forget exactly what the full name is, but they call it Sciences Po. So I took history classes in French with a bunch of international students.
Wow. Okay. That is definitely a formative time in your life. Is there anything outside of studying abroad that distinguishes your time at UPenn?
Oh, wow. So many things. I had a great friend group there. I actually was just texting with my best friend from college who ended up meeting her husband and moving to Switzerland.
Wow.
So she lives a little far away from me, but just formed some great personal relationships. I was on a unique organization there called the Student Committee for Undergraduate Education, or SKU.
Okay.
And it was a competitive process to be selected for SKU. And each year we would choose an initiative that we felt was important to enhance the student experience there.
Oh, wow.
And so that was also a really a critical activity for me in college. And when I went back for my last reunion, we did a SKU reunion, which
great.
was really nice.
And that's different from student government, huh?
Completely, yes.
Oh, okay.
It's completely outside of student government. It's not elected. It's just an independent organization with its own
Like what were some
selection
initiatives?
board.
What were some initiatives that you guys came up with?
So the one that I remember the most, because it was in my senior year, but I'm sure you've heard the criticism that a lot of the professors, particularly at these top universities, are more focused on research than they are on dealing with
Is that because
students.
that's where their money comes from?
It's where the money comes. It's where the prestige comes from.
Ah, okay.
Right?
Okay.
That's what you don't get tenure because the students love you. You get tenure because you published and
Sure.
you're bringing money into the university, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so we, wrote a policy paper that was really very focused on that subject, and with the goal of improving the student experience and relationships with their professors. Of course, it's hard, right? Because you spend all this time researching and putting the policy paper together, and then by the time you send it all in, you go. And so I don't know. It's impossible
I was
to
going to
know.
ask, like, how is it received?
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow.
But hopefully everything got better
Yeah.
from the work that we did.
Oh, amazing. A lot of those big schools create and cultivate such a tight culture amongst the group, whether it's professors and students, and maybe it was on an individual level. Like I didn't feel that at UIC, unfortunately, but that's great. I love hearing that, how much you care about the success of not just yourself but the program and the university.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's important, right? Yeah. That kind of goes back to this initial theme, right? If you have a purpose and you know what that is and you live that purpose, then caring and wanting to improve things for everyone, right? Not just your little bubble, just becomes a part of who you are.
Yeah.
And ironically, bringing that lens to what you do, I think enables me to just generally be happier.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, 100%. So then when in that process, like, did you challenge the LSATs before you graduated?
So I took the LSAT before I graduated, but I knew that I wanted to take at least a year off.
Okay.
So I found a job with an environmental organization. So the organization that I worked for is called Green Corps, and the year that I did it, it was its initial year.
Wow.
And so I had that lined up in the winter, I think is when I think I learned about the program in the fall, and then I applied, and then by the winter, I had my acceptance into the program. That was a fascinating experience. And as the first class to go through it, we were very experimental.
Okay.
And the organization, it grew out of the public interest research group. And the idea was to train environmental organizers. So I was very upfront about the fact that I wanted to do this as a one-year program prior to attending law school. And today I would not be selected into the program because they really only want to bring people in who have a commitment to organizing and who want to make that a career. But at the beginning, they had no way of knowing what would be successful and what wouldn't.
Sure.
So there was really a wide variety of people in that inaugural class. So we did a month-long training in the Boston area. So we all became very close and got to know each other. And then we were all sent individually to different locations throughout the country. We had some say in where we would go, but there was no guarantee that our requests would be honored. And over the course of the year, we ran 5 different campaigns.
Wow.
One of them was a month-long campaign that brought us all back to Massachusetts, where we worked on a packaging referendum. They wanted to reduce the amount of packaging in different products that were on the shelves. As you can tell, that was not successful, and to date, our packaging far exceeds what we need. And then the highlight was for our final project. We were paired up, and a close friend of mine came and joined me in Minneapolis, which is where I spent the year. And we ran a canvas. That one was specifically to encourage a boycott of Mitsubishi, which had been involved in a lot of forest fire, deforesting, or a lot of deforesting, which had caused a lot of fires. So
yeah. I guess at that point, what made you so aware of environmental issues that made you want to spend your year with them?
And, it's funny. It's hard to imagine what that moment, I don't recall even what that moment was.
That's wild, yeah.
But I did always want to fight for, I always cared about people, always cared about animals. And I think as you delve into those issues, the environment is so inextricably linked to all of those things that it's impossible to kind of not realize that it's a hot button.
We're all interconnected
issue.
Yeah. Wow. So then how did that year fly by for you?
Well, it was a very challenging year, right? Because I'm 22 years old. I know nothing. I'm in a city. I mean, not 100% by myself. My college boyfriend was living there as well, but I didn't know anyone else in the city.
Yeah.
And I'm tasked with running these campaigns and getting volunteers together. So it was a challenging year. But what did happen during that year is I applied to law schools, and I applied to a couple of top schools and then a couple of state schools.
Okay.
And I didn't get into the top schools. And as I was touring one of the state schools, thinking I would focus on environmental law at that point, so I was talking to an environmental law professor, and I asked what advice he would give to someone who was looking to go to law school. And his advice was, go to the best law school you can get into, which I hadn't applied to anything in the middle. So for whatever reason, right? And it's funny, now it's part of my lore.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it was that made me listen to his piece of advice over the thousands of other pieces of advice that others had probably dispensed over the years. But it resonated. And so I ended up taking an additional year and applied to additional schools, which brought me to Chicago and Northwestern Law School.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that additional year, was that utilized to cultivate more experience to make you a stronger candidate?
Well, I had expected to get some sort of a job using some of those skills that I had developed in my Green Corps year. But as that process took more and more time, and I didn't have a job by the end of the calendar year, and I knew I wanted to go to law school in September, it didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to keep working, to keep looking for work. So what I ended up doing was I spent 4 months in Guatemala learning Spanish and doing volunteer work.
Is there something about Guatemala that pulled you there?
They have programs for $100 a week. I lived with a family, got 3 meals a day, and 5 hours of one-on-one language instruction.
Oh, okay. So that was the main goal, is to learn Spanish?
Yeah.
I've never heard of such a program. What?
As far as I know, they still exist.
Yeah.
The more popular destination is a small town called Antigua.
Okay.
And they have pretty well-known programs there. But I found a much smaller town in the Western Highlands called Quetzaltenango.
Wow.
Or they call it Shela, colloquially. And so that's where I spent the bulk of those 4 months and did some traveling in Central America as well.
And you had the support of your parents doing this?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I did.
Wow, how cool.
It was amazing.
And you would go back? For fun? Like, would you go back to Guatemala?
I haven't gone back,
Okay.
but absolutely. It's a beautiful country and very fascinating because despite being geographically very small, it has all different types of topography, right? There's a little slice that's Caribbean-like. The Western Highlands is warm by day, but cool at night. Guatemala City, it's just like a valley and it's hot all the time.
Wow.
I didn't even make it up to the ruins, but they do have ancient ruins.
Wow.
And they also have a lot of indigenous populations that don't speak English or that don't speak Spanish.
Okay. Wow. Wow. And so then were you submitting applications while you were abroad then?
I was.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. How often would you check in with family?
Well, again, different era, right? This was before cell phones, so not very often.
Postcards?
Right, postcards. Right, those those little international calling cards, right?
Yeah.
You go to a
yeah.
payphone.
Yeah.
And,
Okay. Wow. What a time.
yeah.
So what were the feelings like when you got that acceptance letter to Northwestern?
Well, I had applied to a bunch of different schools,
Okay.
and so I was just trying to sort of figure out what the process would be.
Yeah.
I didn't know a ton about Northwestern, but obviously it's a terrific school.
Yeah.
And Chicago's a big city, and so I was very, very happy
Okay.
to be able to go to school here.
Sure. It makes me think of, I have a family friend that got a full ride to, I think, DePaul. But he I think he did a week or 2 weeks, and he's like, I can't do this. And he's now like a radio DJ for B96. But
That's so cool.
At that time, he was like working his way up the rung, and he was going to get like an entry level DJ spot. And now he's like the I think afternoon for B96. And you got to bet on yourself sometimes, and to become self-aware of like what's for you and what's not for you. So as you wrapped up your time in Guatemala and you were prepping for school, what was that like then?
I think that was one of those few times that you get where you know what's up ahead.
Yeah.
But there weren't any real obligations. So
Nice, so
I
you're just enjoying yourself. Yeah.
Came back and got just a regular job of some sort and waited to go to school.
In
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Okay. And then did you road trip? Did you get a car and road trip to Chicago?
I did not. I did not get a car. My first car, I forget if it was my second or my third year of law school.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, just.
What was that like back then? What was
parents
Evanston
drove me
like
up.
back then?
Northwestern Law School is downtown.
Is it downtown? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
It's
Pritzker.
right. So it's Chicago and the lake.
Okay. Chicago and the lake. Okay.
Yeah, so
All right.
Chicago and Lakeshore Drive.
Oh, wait. So just
kind of where like
just north
where
of the med school.
Where the med school, right?
Okay.
The med school, the dental school was there.
Okay,
Back when
wow.
that was a thing.
Wow. I used to work at the hospital.
Well, then yes,
wow.
you would know the
Okay,
area
so
well.
I'm
So yeah, we parked in
familiar.
those garages.
Yeah. And how is it? Is it 4 years? Is it 2 years?
Law school is 3 years.
3 years. Oh wow. Did you love every second of it?
I had a great time in law school.
Your whole life up until this point was leading to this, right? So like, did it meet or exceed expectations?
Oh, it exceeded.
It exceeded expectations.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and I'm really glad that I took time to work before going to law school. I think that people who go straight from college to law school, it takes on importance that far exceeds what it is, and I don't know that they're able to enjoy it. I think it becomes very stressful.
I think that's the same with med school.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. But I think very few people go straight to med school. Whereas when I went to law school, the majority of people did
Interesting.
go straight.
Yeah.
We are seeing a trend toward work experience prior to law school. And I encourage everyone I know to take that time, because when you've worked a job, when you've dealt with critical issues for people, when you've seen what really matters out there, it's hard to let a bad grade on a test really destroy you.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. What was formative or memorable about your time in law school?
so many things. One of the common things that happens at law school is you form a study group. And so I met a lovely group of people that, we really just kind of got each other through that first year.
Is there an ideal number?
I don't think so, but you wouldn't want more than 7.
That's a big number still.
Yeah.
It gets a little
So your study group could be
chatty
anywhere probably from
after-
3 to 7.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
But, an interesting thing about Northwestern is it doesn't have any class rank.
Okay.
And so I think a lot of schools that have that, it makes people competitive internally.
So in other schools, it would be publicized like your ranking amongst your cohort?
Yeah.
And how many people are in a cohort?
Well, at Northwestern, there were 200,
200.
but some go up to, I think at Harvard, they have more than 300 in
And
a class.
and where is this, like on online, or like where is this publicized?
Well, I guess I don't know, but it's definitely somewhere because
Yeah.
people put it on their resumes, and
Oh, really?
maybe it ends up in there. So I think right for the top 10, people tend to publicize their number.
Okay.
But otherwise, you might just say you were in the top, 15% or
Yeah.
25%, and then maybe below that they just do. If maybe they don't tell you you're actually the bottom. Maybe they just say you're in the bottom 25%.
And I'm sure after a certain point, your experience outweighs your ranking, right? It's like your ranking's not going to
Yes.
follow you forever.
Right.
Yeah.
Your ranking, but also, as I mentioned, that professor had given me the advice to go to the best
Yeah.
school that,
Yeah.
that I could get into. It also overcomes sort of, if you didn't go to a top law school,
Okay.
it's harder to break into certain things. But
Okay.
over time, merit does win out.
Right.
And,
So
and I see
okay.
people with top credentials who are struggling in their careers, and I see people who went to schools that are not even in the top 100,
Okay.
who've done very well for themselves.
Okay,
So,
okay.
but in those first, 2 to 5 years,
Post-law school.
those things matter.
Okay. But that kind of gives me the idea that people can fake it till they make it. Can you fake it through law school and
Oh,
like
yeah.
hustle your way through law school and make it per se?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And if you get into and attend a Northwestern, you don't need a stellar GPA to do well.
Yeah.
There was a friend who I spent a lot of time with who is brilliant, but studying in law school just weren't his thing. He was partying, he was having fun, and he's a partner at a top law firm right now. So, right, just having Northwestern gets you in the door.
Yeah.
And obviously his hard work has gotten him to where he is.
Were there any standout professors or mentors that you developed with along the way at Northwestern?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time. Northwestern has a renowned legal clinic.
Okay.
And so, and that you can volunteer there in certain capacities, but then you can also work there in a classwork
Yeah.
capacity. So I spent my time with the juvenile justice clinic. And so actually as a law student, you can get what's called a 711 license. It's
Okay.
a temporary license, and it requires being supervised
Okay.
by a licensed attorney. And so I was part of 2 trials at juvenile court,
Yeah.
and one was a jury trial.
Wow.
So,
Oh, that's huge.
yeah,
I'm sure that sticks with you forever.
absolutely.
You know what just stuck out to me? You never worked as a paralegal.
Nope.
And
I did
is that
not.
is that common or not common?
It's very common for attorneys not to work as
Oh,
paralegals.
okay.
I think a lot of times people who go to law firms as paralegals, so there are people who might work as a paralegal prior to going to law school.
Okay.
Some number of them realize that they don't want to be in the profession,
Okay.
and they just opt out
Okay.
altogether. Others realize that they can do really good work as paralegals,
Yeah.
and they can be well respected and well compensated without taking on the burden
Okay.
of a law school tuition. And there's no guarantee after law school that you will make more money
Yeah.
than a paralegal at a top firm.
Okay.
So sometimes they just stick with that path. And then there are others. There was a paralegal who I worked with for a number of years at the law firm where I spent the bulk of my career, and she eventually went to UT and has had an amazing legal career herself.
Wow.
So
Okay. What were some experiences that helped you identify how you might want to serve the world after you get this license?
well, again, it's just kind of My path was fairly windy, which I know your path also was not exactly linear.
Yeah.
And so,
Or I guess let's start with this. Do you have to stick with an industry or a niche, or do you have to like kind of get a special certificate to go into public service or criminal or nonprofit, or like it's just one license and you can just weave in and out?
yep,
That's
you can
awesome.
do whatever you want with it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, unlike medical boards and things like that, right? Okay.
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
you do not commit to any
Sure.
specialty.
Okay.
You do have to pass the bar
Yes.
exam.
Yeah.
In the state where you want to practice.
Yeah.
Or as you get to be more senior, if you move, you can sometimes waive in to another state bar. And then there are continuing education
Okay.
responsibilities. I stopped practicing 15 years ago
Okay.
when I made the switch into executive recruiting. I let my law license lapse about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
Was that an
once
easy
I
decision
realized-
10 years ago?
Oh, yeah, that was so easy.
That was an easy decision.
That was very easy.
Okay. But while you were, when you first started thinking about how you might like to practice, you previously worked with the environmental. It's just like what experiences led you to whatever you started with?
So basically, these were the kind of random life experiences that happen. I had spent my summer with a law firm in Pittsburgh,
Okay.
and I'd also signed up for the Pennsylvania bar.
Okay.
And then in February of my final year of law school, I started dating my now husband and no longer wanted to go to Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I ended up finding a job through the legal clinic
Okay.
with an organization that they had partnered with called First Defense
Okay.
Legal Aid.
Oh, okay.
So my first 2 years, I was working in indigent criminal representation.
Okay.
And again, that was just circumstantial. It just happened. It was
Wow.
a job I could do in the state where I didn't need to have my license
Huh.
because I didn't have the Illinois bar exam until,
Oh.
and
So you were still considered a student at that point then?
well, it wasn't
Like you're
a
working
student.
under someone else's
I was
license?
just right?
Yeah, okay.
But right, everything I did
You said-
using
is
the
that 7-Eleven?
7-Eleven
Okay.
license.
Oh,
Exactly.
interesting. Wow. That's cool. I mean, was that fulfilling at the time?
It was fulfilling,
Okay.
but it wasn't practically sustainable.
Okay.
I was driving to police stations anywhere in the Chicagoland area
Yeah.
at all hours of the night.
Sure.
It was a 24-hour hotline.
You felt like a superhero.
So, kind of.
Well, people are dependent on you
Yeah.
to be so responsive, right?
Exactly. And we had volunteers, so it wasn't
Okay.
100% on me.
Yeah.
But sometimes volunteers weren't reliable.
Yeah.
Sometimes you would get multiple calls at the same time.
Oh,
So that's when I looked for a more traditional job, and I went to a labor and employment boutique firm.
Okay.
And after that experience, I decided, this is interesting. It's another fork in the road, right? So I had done the criminal defense.
Yeah.
I had enjoyed it.
Did you also realize how broken the system is? Or like
Oh, yeah.
how many people came across your desk that of like, why is this person getting prosecuted?
Well, I was dealing with them at the police station.
Oh, so before prosecution. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So the reason that this organization was created is because, and this has been rectified. So as I sit today, the organization still exists and supports in other ways. But at the time, right, everybody knows your Miranda rights, right, that include right to an attorney. Well, in Illinois, you cannot be provided a court-appointed attorney, right, an attorney that you're not paying for, until you pass an indigency evaluation by a judge.
What does that mean?
It meant that if you said, I want an attorney, they wouldn't provide you one because you had to go to court and prove that you couldn't afford to pay for your own attorney first.
What a hurdle.
Exactly.
Oh.
So this agency was begun with the hopes of enabling the public defender's office to go and provide station house representation, which they now finally can.
Wow. How long did that take?
A lot of years, decades.
Oh
it took
my
decades.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, so I had applied to the public defender's office while I was at First Defense Legal Aid, but they go on hiring freezes. So they're basically hiring freezes, and then there are periods where that opens up and where they hire.
Okay.
So in that time, I'd worked for the labor and employment boutique firm. It was a very unpleasant experience.
Oh, no.
And so at that time, I started looking at bigger law firms.
Okay.
Right while I still had this application out to the PD's office. I had accepted an offer with the law firm where I worked for 7 years called Skadden Arps.
Okay.
And about a week before I was supposed to start that job, I got a call from the public defender's office that they wanted me to meet the public defender, which meant I would have gotten an offer. So timing would have been everything. If that had happened 2 months earlier, I would have become a public defender and would have had a completely different path.
It was a week before you had to start, so you didn't even take the meeting?
I didn't take the meeting.
Oh,
I
interesting.
was
You were
committed.
set. You're like, okay.
Yeah, I was set.
Oh,
I was doing this.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people think about this, but like when you think about the lifestyle you want to build and how you want to serve, the nobility of being a public defender versus the income that you might be making, it's like the disparity, right? And so like, how do you pick and choose your battles?
And again, you do the best you can with the information you have in front of you and where life seems to be taking you. So, at that time, I just decided that I was ready to kind of go to a big firm and learn what I could. And at the time, I knew there was a chance that I wouldn't be there very long, right? That it maybe wouldn't serve my values.
If you got in the PDs?
No.
Or at the big firm?
At the big firm, right? When I went there, right, I'd committed to it, but not necessarily for a long time. Just this was a...
what specialty?
So I worked in corporate restructuring, which is a fancy way of saying bankruptcy.
Okay. And is that not as much... Is there any litigation in that?
It's technically all litigation because Chapter 11 bankruptcy is filed through the court. So everything that you do has to receive court approval and is subject to a hearing.
Wow.
But it's very different than traditional litigation in that there are monthly hearings and things just get done.
Okay.
In regular litigation, it can take a year to 20 years before you finally take it to trial or achieve a settlement. With these bankruptcies, while you're operating in a litigation context, the results you're trying to get for your client are corporate results, right? You're trying to get approval to pay people. You're getting approval for different settlements of claims. You're getting approval if you want to change something about your business. You might be selling off all or part of your business. You're coming up with a plan of reorganization as to how you're going to pay back your creditors. All of those underlying events are transactional, but then you have to submit papers to the court and get court approval to be able to move forward, because by filing Chapter 11, you're opening yourself up to that scrutiny and judgment.
I'm already overwhelmed. In the sense of like in law school, do they provide courses to allow you to explore potential specialties that you can practice?
Law school does a very poor job of really giving people any insight into either what skills you need to be successful in the practice or what areas you might want to specialize in.
Wow.
it's very different from med school, right? It's much more intellectual. What you're really learning is you're learning more how to solve problems. Now, there are classes offered, but not required, about trial advocacy types of courses, right? Where you do mock trials. So people who are planning to do litigation can certainly take more classes like that. They do have negotiation types of classes, which obviously have usefulness and can teach success.
But it's like, how do you like find out if you want to do real estate or bankruptcy or, it's like, how do you know?
Yep. And I do think so. Most people, particularly coming from top law schools, will spend a summer in a larger law firm.
Okay.
And so when you go to that firm, you can test out different
firms
areas.
Cover a wide variety of specialties?
Correct.
I see.
But there's no guarantee that the firm will need help in the area where you want to specialize when you come on.
Yeah.
So plenty of people who want to be litigators end up in transactional practices. Plenty of people who want to do transactional work end up as litigators. Sometimes people realize it quickly and change.
Yeah.
A lot of people just accept it and move forward.
Okay. Wow. And to really make it, like, build a lifestyle that you want for yourself, do you essentially have to either become partner or open up your own firm?
Well, becoming partner at a big law firm or even a medium-sized law firm is not necessarily a great path for what we traditionally call a work-life balance.
Okay.
So I think you have maybe more control in that firm if you're a partner with a large book of business because you're generating significant revenue.
Yeah.
And that gives you some sort of say.
Sure.
But I think everyone just has to find their own kind of path and what works for them.
Yeah.
Having your own practice in the world that we currently live in isn't viable for most people.
Okay. As far as what, running a business?
Well, law isn't practiced the way that it used to be. There's so much technology involved. And so people tend to specialize a lot more.
Okay.
So I think there are certain practice areas, for example, trust and estates, right? The people that work with you on drafting your will, dealing with any probate issues, et cetera. Those people are able to be successful as standalones. But what my dad did, that is definitely, that's maybe not disappearing necessarily, but many fewer people are choosing that path.
So at this point, like, how are you advising people to kind of build that work-life balance for themselves?
Well, again, I think that there's I think we need to sort of shift. I don't think that term gets us very far.
Okay.
Everybody has a work-life balance. The question is whether it's a good one and whether it's one that works for you.
Okay.
So I think that people have to prioritize the things that are important to them. And you were saying earlier on, do you put free time on the calendar? Yes. I think most people do need to put free time on the calendar and give themselves that break, because with certain jobs, the work will just keep coming if you just keep accepting it. And so I think each individual has to set that boundary and put their foot down and say when they're willing to do things. But also people can improve their balance by delegating better.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, they say they don't want to work as much, but when it comes down to it, they hold on to everything really tightly, and they're always disappointed that no one else is doing as much as they want them to. but they're not delegating
Sure.
the responsibility away. So I really think that the key for most people is self-awareness and figuring out what your priorities are. Because some people, their priority really will always be work, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But so maybe they figure that out and they say, okay, I'm going to stay in this job, but I'm not doing as good a job at my second priority, which is my family. So I'm going to continue to keep this job, but I'm going to start to carve out some time to be present
Yeah.
at family obligations.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Were there any other specialties that you experienced?
well, as a corporate restructuring attorney at the firm where I worked, we did primarily debtor side work, which means we worked for the company that filed for bankruptcy.
Okay.
Most firms work on the creditor side, which are the banks, companies, and individuals who are owed money by the companies that file for bankruptcy
Okay.
and are in danger of not getting it,
Okay.
because the whole point of filing for bankruptcy is that you get relief from certain debts
Yeah.
to give yourself a fresh start.
You know, that reminds me, I don't know if you can share any insight on the whole Foxtrot debacle. What the heck happened with that? And I'm sure there's multiple sides to that story. And it seems to be bouncing back. Either people don't care or people were ignorant to what happened, but you know, we knew some of the vendors that, you know, were stocking the shelves at Foxtrot, and some went back, some didn't.
Yeah. Look, the Foxtrot debacle, and in Chicago, that was a very meaningful type of a corporate failure that affected a lot of people. On the scale where I was working, our firm represented, you know, United Airlines and Delphi, which was a major auto parts manufacturer. Wow. So we were working at a much bigger scale. But whether it's a giant company or a smaller company, when there is acquisition activity, right? When a company is growing, it's really important to be paying attention to the finances and how everything's working and to try to integrate things well. Mm-hmm. When those types of communications are failing, then there can be some sort of an economic event that can be triggered. And a lot of it has to do with the arrangements that the companies have with their banks, assuming that they have a credit facility that they're operating under, or maybe just secured lenders, right? If they might not have a credit facility per se, but they might have a lot of equipment
it's
that
weird,
is fundamental to running their business that they are paying a monthly amount for, right? But that the company that manufactured the machine still owns. And so when the money coming in and the money going out aren't balancing out the right way, then that bank or secured lender is going to put pressure on the company to pay. And if the company can't pay, that's when they'll file for bankruptcy or
that makes sense,
or another type of wind down activity.
It makes sense. It just seemed weird. Like from the outsider's perspective, they found a loophole and they supposedly were at an auction, but they bought it back on same owner, like for pennies on the dollar.
We see that happen on occasion.
Okay.
And yes, I think that the reason that we have the bankruptcy code that we do is so that a company can reinvent itself. And every now and again, there are circumstances where there is an unfair
Okay.
or unfair seeming results at the end.
Yeah, who's going to pay up, like essentially. And some of the vendors, like they maybe got their money back and some didn't. And it's just like several people or businesses are paying for this bankruptcy. Like someone's got to pay.
Someone has to pay.
Yeah.
Yep. And when you have this type of a company that really the products that they were selling are products from mom and pop operations, where Foxtrot was a big part of their revenue, then it cascades down. And so, right, it's, and we see everything, but, we see everything from where the company that files for bankruptcy, that cascades down because a lot of their suppliers were relying wholly or primarily on that company for their revenue. Or oftentimes we see that it's, yes, a bunch of companies, their bottom line gets hit one year, but the bankrupt company was only, 3% of its annual revenue. And so it was a blip, not a crisis.
Sure. What about nonprofits?
So anyway,
go ahead.
you had asked the question if I had exposure to other specialties.
Yeah.
So as the debtors counsel, we were kind of like a support for the company's in-house counsel. Because all of a sudden, now that they're under bankruptcy court protection, the business actions that they otherwise would have just enacted without any thought, they now have to get bankruptcy court approval. So we had exposure to absolutely everything that a company does, right? We're dealing with their real estate. We're dealing with their employees. We're dealing with their vendors. Dealing with their banks. So as a bankruptcy attorney on the debtor side, I've seen it all. Right? We see their compensation plans.
Wow. You became very enlightened.
Oh yeah, and I never thought that I would practice corporate law. But corporate restructuring enabled me to use that litigation training that I had, but then also to get exposure to these different areas to help a company operate better and to get successfully through their bankruptcy.
So through this exposure, did that push you or sway you in another direction if you were trying to plan next steps after that?
So at some point I realized I had my 3 kids while I was working at this major law firm. And at some point I realized that it would not be sustainable to stay at this firm billing 2,400 hours a year with three kids at home.
In the sense of that's not enough? Or is that you're working too much?
Working way too much.
You're working way too much. Yeah.
So to bill 2,400 hours a year, that means that, you're billing at least 200 hours a month. And you don't bill every hour that you work, right? To bill an hour, it probably takes anywhere from an hour 10 to an hour 20 of your time, depending on if you're switching matters, et cetera. So yeah, it's the only way to bill 200 hours a month is to do, you do an all-nighter or two, you work
per month.
Every weekend, you work a bunch of nights. Yeah, so it's hard to maintain that.
But is that, and for large firms, is that kind of a minimum threshold to make it in there?
No, that's a little high.
Oh, it's high? Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know that happens as much. I mean, certainly at the giant firms, it does. I've talked to attorneys who bill 3,000 hours a year. So it does happen, but I think that 1,900 or 2,000 billable hours is more what firms expect. So, billing about 150 hours.
Sure.
So I started to look for jobs working in-house at a company.
Okay.
And then that's what led me to my next job after that,
Wow.
where I was an in-house counsel at Brunswick Corporation.
Okay. And what's that like? So it's like less, is that less variety or just different variety?
It's a very different job.
Okay.
Again, all in-house
Yeah.
is not the same.
Yeah.
There are companies, take, for example, Walt Disney Company. They have hundreds of attorneys who work in-house.
Okay.
So for them, they've created kind of a mini legal department
Sure.
inside of their structure.
Okay.
So their attorneys tend to be much more focused on one practice area or another. Where I worked, we had about 15 attorneys
Okay.
for a $4 billion company. So we all had specialty areas, but we were exposed to more different things. The interesting thing about being an in-house lawyer is that a lot of what you're doing day to day is business advising that is only tangentially related to legal expertise.
So are you the right person to give that advice?
It's kind of whoever sees the problem. And
okay.
so yeah, if it can be helpful, then
Wow.
absolutely.
Yeah. Was there any part of you that ever wanted to get into nonprofit stuff?
Well, I did when, the first job that I worked
Green
out
Corps,
of.
yeah.
No, the First Defense Legal Aid.
Yeah,
my first job
Okay.
out of law school was nonprofit.
Okay.
And I think that the combination of Green Corps and FDLA, I think it showed that it's hard to really accomplish a lot as a nonprofit. You're only kind of able to fight the fires that are right in front of you.
Sure.
And it seems that for me, at least, I felt like my efforts are better served doing other work with a little bit better earning potential, and then using that to contribute to a lot of different nonprofits, and then also to volunteer.
Wow. So when you hear people wanting to start nonprofits, is the market oversaturated with nonprofits? Like, are people trying to start things that already exist?
Possibly, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if they are able to find a niche of this world that needs their help and provide that help, then I think it's wonderful, and people should do that. It's there are so many problems out there. There are people that need help. There are animals that need it.
Yeah.
There are environmental concerns. And again, everything, right? Back to my scale. You help one thing, it potentially hurts something else. So anyone that is willing and able to take their time to devote it to serving a public good, I think that's terrific.
Okay. At what point did you start to realize you might want to give up practicing?
So I didn't so much make a conscious decision to give up practicing as I realized that after 3 years of working in-house, that while I did get some benefits for my family in terms of having more availability on the weekends, I was commuting out to Lake Forest from the city, and that wasn't sustainable. So I knew that if I wanted to work in the city with more flexibility, that working as a recruiter was an avenue that would be open, and that it was something that I'd always felt like I might enjoy and be good at. And so I just kind of hit one of those inflection points in my career where I was missing out on a lot of events in my kids' lives, and that was only going to increase. And I felt like I should give this potential career shift a chance. And if it wasn't the right fit, I'd be in a great place to find myself a new job.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Wow. And you liked it. You love it. You're still doing it. I mean, so
Yep.
Wow. You went to another company to start recruiting then?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
So I went
okay.
to a boutique Chicago-based firm where I learned how to become a legal recruiter.
And the main motivation was commute, and then
It really was sort of that
Yeah.
that work-life balance.
yeah, and then the work ended up being great.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. I loved how we started the conversation in the sense of like helping people just find a good fit. And I wonder if there's any part of you that wants to help people explore more of that, the why, or help people become self-aware.
So I know a lot of people who have really embraced coaching and a lot of other paths that I think really work with people on the why and the how.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I think you kind of want to do that, both do that a little bit in tandem. I feel like I could pursue that path, but I haven't felt the drive toward that
okay.
other friends and colleagues have.
Yeah.
So my intent, at least for the foreseeable future, is to stay in this lane where I really enjoy what I do. And I have a lot of terrific referrals for people who really kind of need that extra push toward coaching. I try every time when I talk to a candidate, whether it's seeing if they're a fit for the role and disqualifying them, or working with them and getting them through an interview process, I really try my best to unearth what it is that motivates them, what they're looking for in this job move, and to give them the tools that they need to make sure that this move has as many of those as possible.
Okay.
So I kind of take a little bit different approach, but I tend to be I'm a little too fast moving as a career to really do that deep work, I think, and to help to really focus on helping people do that deep work.
And is there an incentive to connecting as many people as possible? I talked with other recruiters recently, but more for like tech recruiting, and some jobs, like you get an incentive if a certain candidate sticks with a client long enough, and you get a bonus for that. So is there like an incentive there should be an incentive to line people up with a good fit, but if is there no cap to that of like, let me just try to churn out as many good fits as possible?
So recruiting, as with all professions, is very different.
Yeah.
Depending on how you're looking at it. As someone who focuses on legal recruiting, I'm not in a high volume, high turnover area.
Okay.
Most companies have very small legal departments. So people really come to us with their most critical hires. And so for us, we are much more focused on getting the right candidate in the door than getting tons and tons of people through the process. So it's really within recruiting, that sort of tech, right, where you just need a lot of bodies doing a lot of different things.
It's different. These are $1 million roles in tech, and I think the supply is shrinking. So I guess it's harder these days. But I think regardless, in any recruiting role, I think you have a common goal of good fit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we almost always have a some sort of a guarantee. So if it's not working out, then we'll find them another candidate. We'll replace them. So it's not necessarily a a reward for them staying longer, but if it isn't a fit, then we'll find them a replacement.
Do you feel like you have a separation? Do you ever bring your work home then now, or is it pretty separate?
So I definitely bring my work home. I don't think anyone can do any type of a profession these days that involves being on a computer or a phone without bringing it home. But because I enjoy what I do so much, it's not the same stress that it was when I was practicing.
Okay.
Also, I frequently joke that recruiting emergencies don't take nearly as long to deal with as legal emergencies. So
interesting.
It might interfere with part of my day. But it's not going to destroy the entire vacation.
Oh, interesting. Okay. At this point in your journey, like, what do you foresee is next for you? Like, what would you like to see happen?
So I still love what I'm doing. I'd love to continue to elevate my craft as a recruiter. I hope that I can find more people jobs that are going to better their lives, that will help them to support their families, to find the time that they need to give back in other ways, and to continue to support company culture that focuses on supporting others and giving back, right? I like people, which I think is becoming more and more rare as we all rely on computers and phones, and human interaction becomes something that people fear as opposed to something that people crave. And I just want as many people as possible to be as fulfilled as they can be, to find the joy in their lives, to understand that happiness and joy is a choice. It's not dictated by your job, by your family, by your relationships. And I think that as people understand that and live that a lot of times those other elements fall into place.
Yeah, I agree. With company culture, is there any part of you at this entire point in the journey where you felt like you wanted to affect company culture? Like, or is the recruiting company you work for particular as to which clients come on board? Like, what if the recruitment company doesn't see eye to eye with the client's culture?
Yeah, look, there's no question that, right? I'm thinking constantly about the culture at my own company as well as the culture of the companies that I'm sending people into.
Yeah, right.
And, at the end of the day, I think that, all that I could do is to try to not work on an engagement that I didn't feel aligned with my values. But the reality is that there are always going to be companies that don't maximize their culture, that will be having hiring needs and someone's going to need to fill them. And so yeah, I think that ideally every job I'm working on is something that I believe in. And thankfully, for the vast majority of the work I've done, I've felt very good about all four sides.
This is a selfish question, but like when someone's trying to start a nonprofit, at what point should you, do you retain, what's the ideal way to connect with an attorney? Is it on retainer, or is it just an hourly basis, or how do we do that?
So depending on what your need is, a lot of the local law schools have clinics that might help with that. So,
Okay.
so I would start there. I believe Chicago Kent
Okay.
has a business clinic, and they should be able to tell you whether or not what you're trying to do is something that would qualify.
Oh.
So, for sure, I
All
would
right.
say
That's a
go
good
ahead
tip.
and start and see what you can get for free.
Okay.
Generally, if you're just looking for help incorporating a
Yeah.
501c3, it's pretty basic. And I would be shocked if you couldn't find someone in your network who wouldn't do it either pro bono or
Okay.
at a reduced rate.
Yeah.
So I think you should use this platform and the connections that you've made and the people that you've talked to and reach out to that network because, right, you're trying to do something to help others. And
Right.
so you certainly don't want your initial costs to all go to attorney bills. But if you find that you are ultimately going to need to pay someone, it would generally just be either on an hourly basis or a project basis, right? So it might
Okay.
just be a flat fee
Okay.
for the incorporation. And you'll just want to ask exactly what's going into that. And again, if you're not able to find someone in your network to do it for free, hopefully there's at least someone in your network that can gut check the quote that you've been given before you sign on the line.
Okay. Appreciate that, Carolyn. Is there anything else we should know or that you want to put out there?
So the one other major thing that I do with my time started about 15 years ago when I left the practice of law is I'm a co-founder of Chicago School GPS, which consults with families in the Chicagoland area about school choice.
College school choice.
No, we do preschool.
What? Back all the way to preschool?
Yeah, preschool. Preschool through college. College is a newer addition.
Oh, okay.
My colleague, Grace Sawin, she really leads the charge towards most of the consulting work that we do. I sort of was there at the beginning. It was my running into a former Skadden colleague that really spurred the idea and got it off the ground. And I contribute as I can, but Grace has devoted her time 100% to Chicago School GPS, and she's incredibly bright and knowledgeable. And
So is it asking families what they want for their kids out of these schools and then lining them up with the appropriate schools?
yeah, it's really more educational for the families because the Chicago school system is very, very good. We have tremendous schools, and it is very viable to raise a family in the city, which is something that I have done, and my two co-founders in this company, as well as we have additional moms who work with us on an as-needed basis. It's unnecessarily complicated. So we really just demystify it.
Oh, cool.
And from there, we can do as much or as little as families want. So I would say the most popular offering we have is a 90-minute consultation where we run through how Chicago schools work. We do public and private. We explain the different timelines and how they overlay with each other. And people will do that 90-minute consultation, or they'll do a group presentation. We have a lot of real estate agents who bring us in to speak with their clients. We have mom groups that will bring us in as they're trying to figure out what to do. And that's it for a lot of people. Or maybe we hear from them again when their child's in 6th or 7th grade and thinking about middle school or high school. We can, however, really work with the family. We had a family that was relocating and worked with them to help set up tours and interviews and help them with the applications.
Wow.
So we can really shepherd someone all the way through the process, or we can just give them that knowledge that they need to ensure that they're making a good choice.
When you guys came together and co-founded this, like, did you feel like you had a leg up on something, like this network that you had that you wanted to bring forth to the world or to the city?
It was really just that Grace had done so much research for her own kids and their education, and I had sent my kids to a couple different schools. They had sent their kids to a couple different schools, so we had some knowledge through that. But it was really just we found a need. It wasn't even that we felt that we had so much information. We just felt that so many people had no information and that they were terrified.
Yeah.
And so we just wanted to demystify this and make sure that people were taking advantage of these great schools that they're paying taxes for.
It's interesting you say that. It's refreshing you say that, because there is to me, I think there's a negative stigma of schools in Chicago, and that people are leaving for the suburbs.
Right, and that was really, so it was providing a service that existed but was not well advertised, but also because these moms and I have loved raising our kids in the city and completely understand people relocating to the suburbs. But we felt that it didn't make sense for people to do that for schools, because we strongly believe that the city of Chicago, in addition to offering some of the top schools in the state, it offers choice. And so I, for example, have been able to send my kids to different schools that fit their personal and educational needs, whereas my colleagues did it more traditionally and found schools that were fits for their family, for all of their kids.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I'll take a bigger peek at that.
Well, maybe you'll have Grace on
Sure,
as a guest
yeah.
at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to.
She's also fascinating.
Shed some more light.
She's a recovered architect who is now a school consultant. So windy paths.
If someone wanted to reach out and connect, what would be the best way to connect with you?
I'm everywhere. LinkedIn is where I transact a lot of my business.
Okay.
So Carolyn Aberman on LinkedIn. But you can also email me at carolyn.aberman@cornferry.com.
Okay.
Or you can always find me at Midtown, Victor, because I spend a lot of time there.
Okay. Carolyn, thank you so much. This was a treat. We'll be staying in touch, and I'm sure you might be back, or Grace will be back, and we'll hear more of the work you're doing.
Thank you so much. This has been a really, really great discussion, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Everyone else, thanks for tuning in. We will catch you in the next episode. Bye.